VP of engineering at Pellucid. He was a he's still a JavaScript developer inside, but now he's doing more Scala, which is useless. And he makes a lot of games just for fun, and he was famous for a Flappy Bird cover.
It was a Flappy Bird typing tutor where you had to like type words, and it was Flappy Bird, so it was like as hard as Flappy Bird, and the words were really tough. So it was the toughness of Flappy Bird with the toughness of typing. That was good.
It was.
I got a lot of people writing me angry emails saying it wasn't a good way to learn to type. Okay, so
Share your screen.
Isn't it?
No.
I did it.
No.
I went screen share. Maybe I missed the OK button. Screen share. This guy. Start.
Yes.
No.
Maybe. Yes.
And then this.
Let's see speaker. Is it?
Nah, it doesn't like full screen.
Craziness.
Alrighty.
Why doesn't it like the full screen? That's interesting. It was fine with full screen with Chrome, but not Keynote, huh?
Okay, I'll just not do full screen. You can just see a little preview on the side. Then you'll know when things are going to wrap up.
But you need to share again.
Yeah.
Share your screen. Screen. Share. Here you guys.
Can I get rid of this thing?
What if you full screen switched to a different space and then shared from there?
That sounded complicated. Can I get rid of it? Oh, yeah. Look at that, it's beautiful. Okay. I need to see the edge, otherwise I won't know what I'm going to say. Oh, I fucking did it.
You can say it's
Sorry.
for mature.
Yeah. Okay, last time. Let's just do this. It's right? Done. Okay. Don't press play. Can't even. Okay. Alrighty. So yeah, I'm going to talk about game dev. There's going to be some trolling in here. But the premise, this isn't the trolling bit, the premise of this talk is game developer as the new indie filmmaker. And the reason I'm sort of saying that is that game dev, like making games is a space where you can tell stories like a movie, and you can kind of try to elicit responses from the audience and try to get like a certain feeling from the people playing the game. You can make them like on a low budget, like indie film. You don't need a lot of resources. You can distribute them to a huge audience, really easy. And so games like indie films are the most interesting when they're like sit right on the edge between entertainment and art. That's when there's like a good space to have something that you go, oh, that was really cool. Now here's my trolling bit. Web apps and websites do not sit on the border between entertainment and art. Right? There's no Citizen Kane of web apps. So that's why this is my motivation for trying to do this in my free time, is just to there's a kind of a feeling in the indie scene that there's a space here where you can try and do something creative and different. And it's also a space where you could also make some money too if you make something that's cool. So it's win-win. Now, indie filmmaking, all you needed was like a camcorder and a bunch of friends, and then you could become the next Quentin Tarantino sort of thing. Game dev, it's even better. You don't need any friends. You just need like a laptop, an idea, and then you can be the next Notch Minecraft guy, Super Meat Boy guy, Braid guy, and Binding of Isaac guy, and you can be rolling in money. So it's a good space. This talk is going to go through 3 parts. I'll just quickly go over sort of games and movies, then a bit on how to make a game. So the idea of this talk is like, you should, if you wanted to do one or never really thought about how they work, you should be able to just walk away and go, okay, yeah, I get it now. No problem. That's the goal of the middle part of this talk. And then the last one, we'll go back to sort of using that knowledge for good over boring. So doing something interesting with that knowledge. So games, the sort of the biggest games at the moment when people think about games, I just realized something. I've got so many animations and things here that I'm not going to play in.
Well, you can turn your screen then. Yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah, you play on yours. Just turn it on the screen.
All right, but they won't be on here.
It's fine. It's internet users. Who cares?
Okay. Well, wait, what was somebody had a solution, potential solution here. What was it?
I thought that if you had Keynote running full screen on a different space and then shared it from...
What if I, oh yes, okay. So if I go into full screen, come back to here, retry and share it.
That seems
It's not there.
It's not there?
Huh. It doesn't like it.
Okay.
Yeah,
What's the magic what's the magic to connect directly to the Apple TV?
Yes, you can connect. You
I'm
can
doing
be,
it.
You can be the one.
Boring room.
Boring
Room is the one.
How do I connect?
We should not go on YouTube. The boring room.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to kill your recording. So anyway, I don't know if this is going to work. Could not connect.
Should I
Because you
unconnect
need to.
myself?
Yes.
I'll
He's
stop.
connected.
I'll
So
stop
that's why you
speaking.
connect. That's a good solution.
Technical difficulties are always so entertaining.
Do it now. Or we will watch a movie.
Turn it off, turn it back up.
Beautiful.
Oh, it's
Wait, don't get your hopes up yet.
You still need to share your screen.
Okay,
Right.
we're back. Well, I still don't
Okay.
have my cheating.
Can you share the screen?
I can't even
Okay,
get to.
you just talk.
Yeah, I'll just talk. Well, we'll fix it in post. The biggest sort of games at the moment on one end of the spectrum is sort of the brosive shooty games, and on the other section is like the subway games. So here's my sticking with my tenuous like games as movies thing. Here's the biggest games in the world at the moment. This is like a Call of Duty kind of game, and that's the equivalent of like Fast and the Furious 50, whatever it's up to. It's like these huge teams of very talented people making like impressive eye candy for 14-year-olds. Kind of thing. It's like these are where the YouTube commenters come from. On the other end of the spectrum, we've got the subway games, and these are like the shows that people for some reason watch every night, even though they're unapologetically unoriginal. But they're just the same things over and over, and people keep going back. So if we've got those two sort of ends of the spectrum, then games have got like a space where they can do something more interesting in this, right? Because there's AAA, there's big budget movies, and there's terrible TV, and then there's good stuff. So there's good stuff too. So here's a couple of examples that I like. I don't know why it's going slow, but who cares? This is Limbo. I'm comparing him here to like an Eraserhead, just mainly because of the haircut, but it's kind of the dark noir style, and it's a very kind of it's a conventional kind of a platformer, but it's in a strange situation, and so you feel very disconcerted playing the game. You feel something's not quite right in the whole game, and it puts you in a strange position to play the game from. Another example here is Hotline Miami. It's like horribly violent and disturbing, and yet at the same time you're kind of grinning when you're playing it, and it makes you laugh. Like you shouldn't, but you go, oh, it's my Pulp Fiction of the movie. This is my favorite. This is kind of the breakout hit from last year. It's called Papers, Please. Hex! It was a Hex game. It's by, what's his name?
I don't remember.
Lucas Pope? Yes, Lucas Pope. He made a game. The game is about stamping paperwork out of border crossing. Like that's it. That's the whole game. And it is like beat out a bunch of like the AAA games, big those shooty brosive games. It got better reviews than that in like popular press as the best game of the year, right? And it's just this like stamping paperwork game, but the reason it did it is, and the reason I'm comparing it over here to Taxi Driver, is because in Taxi Driver, when you're sort of finished watching the movie, you walk out like wondering whether De Niro was like, was he the good guy or was he the bad guy? I don't know. Kind of, oh, that was really strange. Like, you kind of walk out feeling in this questions about the motives. But with Papers, Please, you actually end up finishing the game and walking away going, like, am I the good guy or the bad guy? In real life, am I the good guy or the bad guy? I've made these decisions. What does it say about me? Like, and that's where the interactivity of games can be used to be like, more powerful than even movies, I think. So there's a lot of space to do more stuff. It's very young. You can be the next Kubrick or John Waters or Ed Wood or whoever you want. So we don't need cameras and lots of people and sets and things. We just need one thing. We just need an infinite loop, right? That's what we need, is that core thing. And then add a little bit, and that little guy goes across him. That was Crockford there, running across the screen. So this is the bit. This is the bit that you should remember. If you have any inkling to make a game, then this is kind of the bit to remember. And one thing to note, I'll say it from the start, like this infinite loop idea of things going around isn't really how we work on the web. We're more event-driven, where we react to events. Game programming tends to be more procedural, I guess. In a model, you can think of that. You can do it however you want, but it works best if you think about it this way. And a lot of things, even a lot of the new game APIs coming out, work in this way, where they expect there to be an infinite loop, where instead of just someone clicks a button and you change something, it's like you click a button and you set something to be changed in your state. And that just helps to orchestrate things, otherwise things get out of sync. Typically games, you can get around it and you can make functional games, but if you're just starting out, and the games are a huge ball of state, and functional programming, you can easily abstract the state and make it nice, but if you don't want to go there, just start thinking of it as a ball of state that you just have to deal with for now, and you can make it cleaner as you go along. Here's the steps. Loop, grab some input, move everything just a little bit like a stop action movie. Every frame something moves a tiny bit, figure out when things collide, and then draw them. So that's the main steps. Things to remember to make a game. Going back to my ball of state, you can make things lovely and you can make things good, but if you're just starting making a game, there's no such thing as a hack. There's no game reviewers ever that says, like, that game was amazing, but you couldn't reason about the code. Right? That's not a game review. That's not how it works. A good example of that is Super Meat Boy, a really popular platformer from a few years ago. One thing that it's really noted for is having these amazing controls. Like, the controls feel like they're like wired into your brain, and you think, and it's moving, and it's very difficult, really difficult game. But the controls are so nice that you never feel like it's the game's fault. You feel like it's your own personal failure, right? And so you feel like, oh, I've got to do this, I've got to do this. And you do it again and again and again, and it's so nice. And when interviews, when asked about how the programmer, how he got this code, like, what's the magic algorithms that made the controls so nice, he was just it's just hacks. It's just a ball of hacks. He goes, I did this, didn't feel good, I added some stuff, it didn't feel good, I added some stuff, and then there it is, it works. So don't overthink stuff when you're starting game dev. Overthink it later. At first, just get things working. So let's get things working. If we're making games for the web, which is the best thing to do, we need something to draw on. The first games and the only option really, besides sort of text games on the web, was targeting the DOM. This is DHTML Lemmings from 2004. DHTML, remember that? So I've done an inspect on there, and you can see it is a div. And there's still an option to do that, right? It's still an option to keep a thing in sync. And in fact, one night in the middle of the night, I woke up going, remembered this game, and went, how did that guy do destructible terrain in 2004 with a DOM? Like, how did he do destructible pixels in 2000? There's no pixel level access in the DOM. There's an answer, but you have to think about it. I didn't think about it. I actually got up and found it on the net and went, oh, of course, it's brilliant. Another option is WebGL, which is a good one at the moment, but don't do that if you're just starting now. It's filled with stuff from the past, mixed with stuff from the future, and it's hard. So we'll start with the Canvas API. It's the easiest one. It's got a whole bunch of things for drawing stuff on the screen. It's all we need to start making some games. Now, back to our thing from before. Before we get there, we actually need the screen to come back.
It's actually you. No, it's not you, because you're not connected.
You're sleeping.
Yeah, just sleeping.
And you're not
Does he feel relaxed right now?
So this code then I'm going to show you, it doesn't matter, I don't care, the code's not important, the idea is important, right? So you can think about it in however you want. Here I've just got some sort of object that's holding the game, I've got some models, then I've got the things that I talked about before, something that's going to run all the time and be our infinite loop, some way to get some stuff from the users, move things, check for collisions, and then draw them. So I've got these methods. And now in this example, I'm going to propagate them sort of as a tree so that everything will get their little update event and everyone can move just a little bit. And then when everybody gets drawn and it looks like a magic thing. I don't care how you do a loop, just loop. There's a million ways you can do it. Here's the worst way, but it's fine. Just get it done, right? And I'm calling that container object tick and render it, tick and render it. This is the worst way to do a game loop, but Git is fine. And here's it in action. I'm moving something just a little bit, some sort of counter, and then I'm modding that to get the color value and drawing it, and we've got some sort of animation. And hey,
maybe a mention to what code this is, because it's JavaScript, but not JavaScript.
What do you mean? It's ES6.
Yes.
I've been doing so much, I forgot. This is ES6. You can tell it doesn't say function anymore. But they're functions. Sorry. A better loop, there's a million ways to do loops, and they do get more complicated because people's computers run at different speeds, and if you don't take into account the delay between frames, things will be out. And so there's a lot more things you can do to make they become more complex, especially if you've got physics and you need to make sure that everything happens the same so that things don't start jumping at different heights. But don't worry about that for now. But this guy should be using this guy, not set interval. That's the simplest one. It just does a loop. In fact, you don't even need to get the delta then because he passes the delta, I think.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. But we've got our loop now. It's running at 60 frames a second. And that's good. That's what we want. The next thing to do is to have some sort of concept in your game of like an entity, a thing that's in your game. This is just an object that I instantiate with, okay, yeah. He's got a tick and he's got a render like before. And then the game is saying the player is this little guy in his tick method. Make him move just a little bit. He's moving by this amount. And then render, he's drawing the image on the screen, and hey, he's bouncing around. He looks really cool there. Inside that game object, you need some way to update what's alive and what's dead. Here's just a simple way that I've done it. I'm just filtering out things that in my tick, I'll say, if you're still alive, then return true, I'm still alive, and then I can filter them out. If you have a list of bad guys or whatever, and then the player. And you can pass this down, so you end up with a tree of messages that go through, move yourself, move yourself, move yourself, and everybody tells everyone to move yourself, everybody moves. And then render yourself. And that's how I'm getting some you guys in now. So here's my baddies. I've got a whole bunch of them. When they come off the screen, they'll return false, I'm off the screen, and then they're not in my list of baddies anymore. And then the new baddies go on the end. That's fine, right? We've got things happening. And their tick method is just move 2 pixels this way. Then we need some input. Like I said before, what you really need to do is capture the state, capture the key events, and then store them for like an old school polling kind of method. Here I'm saying like keeping a track of some key states and then asking about the state when I'm checking it. And now this sounds weird because it's from the web, but even like there's a new gamepad APIs that are, so you can plug in your Xbox thing in that doesn't have the option. This doesn't have these events. It only works in this manner because it's the game wave, right? So it's kind of a bit strange, but like, otherwise you'll be setting things if you click too many times and then you're in the middle of calculating collisions and you're suddenly adding new bullets. Do you add them? You need to get them. That's why you need to keep your state so you can coordinate it. The last thing is getting some collisions. There's a lot of complex ways you can detect collisions. There's a lot of very simple ways. This is my favorite simple way. Make everything a box and just detect if the edges overlap. Something like this, and then that's a collision. Now you want to be careful with this. See what I've done here? This is a super trick. In fact, they use this in a lot of games for real, is you make the box smaller than the thing that it is. This blue box is his bounding box, but it's much smaller than him. And this is so actually if this green box here hit the pink legs, it wouldn't say you hit. And you might think that's bad, like you'd rather have a pixel perfect one. But actually when you're playing a game, it feels worse. And most games will artificially shrink this so that when you're playing the game, you're like, whoa, did you see that? I nearly died, but no, I'm so good at this game. But no, they weren't good at this game, but they feel good. Feeling good is more important. Yeah, so that's the end of the last step with collisions. Got some sort of thing that will fire a method on the guy and say, you've been hit. And then I can say, this is remove him. He gets returned from that filter of lists, and he's gone out of the list of bad guys. And the bad guy no longer gets ticked, he no longer gets rendered, he's gone. Looks pretty good, eh? The only other thing you need to really start, like once you've got this next step, then you've got all the Flappy Birds and most of the 2D games that are shooters. You can have all those bullet hell shooter games. You can have so many games will work with just those little things I've done here. But another thing that's important is having some kind of way to move between screens. Maybe have like a title screen and a game over screen, and I've just got like the game scene, and I'm ticking it and I'm rendering it just like before, and it controls who's getting drawn and who's getting rendered. Pretty simple. I mean, it's nothing interesting in it. That's so simple, but you just end up in this state where you can control and coordinate bunches of things that get ticked and rendered, and it's a game. Done.
Awesome.
There's a couple of last extra things. That will let you do shoot 'em ups and things, but people pretty quickly get sick of shoot 'em ups because you want to do more things and you want to do your platformers and things, and that's when getting the 2D array type things help. Like we've got you can easily imagine how you can cut this up into a map of things that you draw on the screen. It's really quite simple. There's no magic to it, and by just moving the animation frame a little bit every couple of frames, you draw the next picture, draw the next picture, draw the next picture. Here I've got two versions of it, of the map that I'm drawing in the background. One where it goes nice and smoothly and it all looks nice like this kind of thing. And then one you'll see it goes chunky in a minute. And the reason is I've got a camera object, which is just a viewport object, right? And the reason I've made the viewport a bit smaller so that you can see all I'm really doing is I've got a map that's as big as you can imagine this universe, but you only ever draw a tiny rectangle out of your 2D array of all the things, and that's your camera object. And as long as that's bigger than the people can see here when it chunks, it's because I'm drawing it too small, and you can tell that I'm just drawing it on the fly. But if it's smooth off the edge, then it looks like it goes forever, and you can travel into distant lands. That's the camera idea. If you're making stuff for the web, you get all the web stuff. You all know the web stuff, but then you can just use it for games. So you can make really interesting stuff, and as soon as it's in the browser, you can put it in your games. Ones are coming for the game. The gamepad guy, Mozilla's just released versions of their VR-enabled browsers. Chrome's got a version of it too. Works good with the Oculus Rift. Full screen and pointer lock APIs. There's a few different Pointer lock, so you can do like first-person shooter things, and you don't like zoom your mouse out of the screen and click on your emails and die. So there's a whole bunch of game engines frameworks you can use. I don't like them because, I mean, I don't really like playing games that much. I just like making them, and so I don't want to use somebody else's framework. I want to do it myself from scratch. But if you're going to do it, you make your own one, then there's a few good ones out. Phaser.io is really cool. It's an up-and-coming framework. It's built on top of Pixie.js, which is just a renderer. It lets you use like the 2D style stuff, but renders it to WebGL, so it's super fast. WebGL is, like I said before, it's tough, but it's very fast because it's rendered on the GPU. But WebGL is actually a 2D API. It's not a 3D API. It doesn't know anything about 3D at all. It's just 2D, and it's fast. But because it's so fast, you can make it do 3D things. Right? Canvas is too slow. So that's an interesting thing, though. WebGL has nothing to do with 3D. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. If you're making web-based games now, getting them on your phones and tablets and things is pretty easy. Very easy in a lot of cases. You can have it running on all the... This guy, I've got him on my phone, actually. I just dropped him in. There's a project called Ejector. Oh, there he is. I've got him running in Portrait. But I just dropped my Canvas thing straight in there, 60 frames a second on your phone, and you push it to the App Store. It's like very easy now to get these things deployed on any targets, and they're getting... HTML5 games is getting really big, despite, like, and in secret almost. This is, in the background here, there's a game called A Wizard's Lizard by Lost Decade Games, and it's kind of like the game Binding of Isaac style. It's on Steam and selling, I mean, it's getting really popular, and it's HTML5 game, JavaScript game, but those guys don't say that, right? It's just a game. Nobody cares how you did it. Nobody cares what the code is. Nobody cares what hacks. It's just like, hey, this is a really cool game. You can package it, you can deploy it to all platforms, and everyone thinks it's a game. Okay, I'll quickly go through the last bit. So now that you can make games, you have to choose what you're going to put on the screen. And there's some easy things to do to make even your crappy games feel and look and good. You've got to make some decisions, right? This is where the art comes into it. You can have huge, amazing graphics and effects and still just be boring, right? And still not just go, wow, yeah, that's really cool, it looks amazing. And it's not engaging and not interesting, which is good if you're like me and have programmer art. So there's chance for you to, there's more than just amazing graphics in making an experience that people will engage in. And that's where you think about user experience in the real sense of user experience, what the user experience is like. You think about every step of your game, what will the user see and feel when they see this? And then that's where you want to try to put in things to surprise or shock or just capture them in some way. It doesn't have to be crazy graphics. And some games have done this really well. This is Braid, which is a really cool game, sort of strange, out of order tale. And the tale was really cool, even though it wasn't the main part of the game. But this is my favorite down the bottom here. I always forget who made it. Jason Rohrer or something. It's a Java thing, I think. It was 16 pixels high and 160 pixels across, and it goes for exactly 5 minutes. I think it's called Passage. It goes for 5 minutes, and it just makes everybody who plays it cry. It's like if you don't cry when you play it, or at least feel sad, very sad, then you're not my friend. It's really good. Impressively done with terrible no graphics. There's more to it than just it's the aesthetic and the story behind it that makes it much more interesting than huge graphics.
What's the name?
Passage.
Passage.
Yeah. I think I'll put a link up somewhere. Aesthetics versus graphics, kind of along the same thing now. It's kind of having a theme for your game that you carry throughout the whole thing. So it's no use just storing one part of the game that looks really cool if it's not related to the rest. You need to have the whole game feel like a cohesive package. And this is where you can really make things work in an interesting way. This is like Minecraft. People say complain that Minecraft had crappy graphics, and it's like it's a good game even though it had crappy graphics. But I think it was it succeeded because of the crappy graphics. It was putting you in a Lego blocky world that you're supposed to populate with your brain, right? And so if it had super high def textures that look like real things, you'd just be lost because you go, why is the sand in a square? It doesn't make sense. But by having a big blocky aesthetic and pixel aesthetic and a square sun, you could lose yourself in it because it felt like you were in that blocky world. And it doesn't mean it has to be bad. Down the bottom there's bad graphics. GTA 4 was like, they put a lot of attention to detail in making this 80s crime city, and the graphics were amazing, but the aesthetic was very impressive. They covered the whole world. You were in this world. Now, once you make your first games, and they'll probably be hopefully be very simple, keep them very simple to begin with. One key to not forget is to try to juice it. Juice is the kind of small bits of animations and screen shakes and effects that really can give your game character, and they can be really cheap effects. This talk here, Juice It or Lose It, you should definitely check it out. It's a really good talk on how adding these tiny pieces is basically not optional. It just makes a world of difference. And they go through the process of taking this and turning it into this crazy game with particles and things. It's the same game, but it looks like you would play it. This is my favorite thing is they just put huge eyes on it. And the huge eyes like follow the ball, and the further the ball is away from him, the bigger his mouth gets. And it's like, oh! It doesn't change the game at all. And it's stupid, and you can code it in 5 seconds, but it changes everything. Suddenly the game is, whoa, it's a cool game. A few people who do this good. This is Vlambia, the game company Vlambia. They are excellent at doing this. This is Luftraus's game. They make a game in like a weekend, and then they take like a year or two just doing just juicing it. So they'll get a core concept, simple concept, and then they just fill it full of every little effect and animation and tiny things that they can, and the games always feel amazing. This is HTML5 one. I'll just skip over it, but it's a good version. He made that in the Ludum Dare Game Jam, and then it's been released on Steam recently, and the only difference was a bunch of juice. So that's it. Watch this movie and go to this website. This movie will make you like want to quit your job and then try to kill yourself making a game. And this is a game jam that happens 3 times a year. Just missed it, sorry. And it goes for a weekend, and it's a really good way to get you to actually start and finish a game in 48 hours, and really good at making sure getting you to decrease your scope and getting stuff done, which is the most hard lesson to learn. And that's it. This is the last most important message. So get out there and start making games. That's it.
Awesome.
The end.
Question. So when you do the user interface part of the game, like the score screen, or do you use the same technique, the scene, or you use more web-oriented?
It depends. Okay, using CSS saves you so much, and HTML, do it because it saves you do it in 10 seconds, you can do everything. That's the benefit about doing games in HTML5 games, is you get all the power of the web, which is CSS and HTML. And then, well, it depends what you're doing. If it's like, if you're clicking pause, then you're still going to have to wait till you get to your tick thing to stop rendering the next screen anyway. But in terms of handling events, you still need to handle it in your system somewhere. It depends what you're doing, though, I guess, because you can combine CSS transitions and things as well, which don't care about your game loop at all. They're running on their own thing. So then yeah, just fire and forget. It's only if you don't want to go updating a list of entities that are about to get checked in the middle of things getting checked and things getting out of sync.
Have you ever experimented with multiplayer games? And if so, do any of the libraries that you mentioned have packages for multiplayer stuff?
Nothing has anything out there. You have to do it yourself. I've recently been working on my first multiplayer game, and it's so much fun. It's so much better when you get like playing against someone else. So it's really good. But it's like the Socket.io is the library, and with Node.js makes it really simple to do it. But there's not much that's game specific, and there's a lot of things you have to do to make it really. It's hard. It's a hard problem, and you have to do a lot of like, depending on your game, client-side prediction, and then make sure you're running the game on the server, because if you're running it just locally, people will cheat. And yeah, it's a hard problem. But it's with Socket.io and Node.js, I was surprised at how simple it was. But then the devil is in the details if you wanted to release it as a real. It was simple to get it up and running with friends. Like, yay! But then to actually have something that you'd want to put out there for other people to not hack, it would be more. And like in my version, I don't care that it's kind of blocky and jumpy, but then you'd need to do sort of interpolation and guessing where players are going and things like that. So it's a bit of work. It's not that hard though. It's like the basics is easy, then to perfect it is hard.
Have you done both local multiplayer, like on the same keyboard, and also like multiplayer over?
I've only done it over the network.
Okay.
Yeah, but they're quite popular. On the same keyboard games. It's a great getting around.
Do games like through iOS or Android support sockets, for one question? Do you know, like if you release a game and have a socket server for multiplayer games?
They should.
Yeah, they should, but then now that you've said it, it sounds like that is an interesting issue. I'm going to say yes, they do.
Okay. But my other question, or like main question, was how do you get feedback while you're developing? Like, do you launch it iteratively, like on the web first, and try to get feedback somehow then? Before you, like if you were developing.
This is the beautiful thing, is it's like just a web-based thing, so you can easily test it and easily get people to test it and give feedback, and then wrap it up at the end, the last step. Wrapping it up is just like normal web design stuff. There's like cross-browser, then it becomes cross-platform issues, which is just the same as cross-browser, but even more painful. So that one that I put the game on, which I like, put it on my phone, Ejector, it's just the guy re-implemented the entire Canvas API in OpenGL and his own JavaScript using the hidden Java. I think it's out there in the JavaScript core from Apple, but it means that you can't run any CSS or anything on it because it's just a canvas screen. So you end up, then you have to start drawing your own buttons and things. Yeah.
Well, I guess like part of my question was, is there like an app store for HTML5 games or somewhere where you can launch and like have it be part of an ecosystem where people are looking?
I think itch.io is the closest at the moment. They're just very supportive of HTML5. Okay. Yeah, itch.io, but everyone's coming around to it. Newgrounds, which used to be like where all the Flash devs hung out, they support HTML5 games directly and everything now, and you can start adding in the monetizing things and stuff like that. There's talk about more integration with Steam, but I don't know how that'll go. It's slow, you know, it's slow. It's because people still think that doing it in the web is a joke. If you go on game dev forums and say, "Oh, I'm making a game in JavaScript," and they're all go, yeah, go make your little point and click thing, you know. But thanks to Chrome and browser wars and things, we're really getting speeds that if you're just starting to make games now, if you were just going to go out and start learning game dev now, then the browsers are going to be ahead of you until you're making really big games, because they're getting faster and faster.
Thanks.
Cool. Thank you.